from the candidates will help you decide who you want to be the next Attorney General for the Commonwealth. All three candidates were invited. However, Andrea Campbell had a scheduling conflict. The primary election will take place on Tuesday, September 6th, the day after Labor Day. This forum is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook. We ask the audience to be respectful when posting in chat. Please do not engage in harassing, discriminatory, and intimidating behavior that stifles debate and constructive dialogue. Since 2009, JPP has been working to build a progressive voice in our community and organize for change in Boston, Massachusetts, and nationwide. We conduct candidate forums and organize to support progressive candidates at all levels of government, from city council to president. In addition, we hold educational forums and advocate for progressive change in our state on issues such as criminal justice reform, affordable housing, equitable education funding, safe communities for immigrants, progressive revenue, and transparency in government. We are the clipboard holders, door knockers, and question askers for progressive values in our community. And this year, we need you to come out and volunteer like it's 2018, when we helped elect Ayanna Pressley to Congress, Rachel Rollins to District Attorney, and Nika Delgado to State Representative. JPP is hosting Sunday 3 p.m. canvases for both Nika for Senate and Sam for Senate for State Rep, and Thursday night phone banks for Tanisha Sullivan for Secretary of State. We'll also be running early voting and get out the vote efforts for all our endorsed candidates. Please find time to volunteer for all the extraordinary candidates that you have endorsed. We win when we organize. In addition to volunteering for candidates, we also need you to knock doors for the Fair Share Amendment, which will be on the ballot on November 8th. This amendment is a matter of economic justice. It will make the very rich pay their fair share of taxes and improve our transportation system and fund public education. We will be posting volunteer sign-up links in the chat. Tonight's moderator is JPP's own co-chair, Ed Burley. Ed?
Okay. Thanks everyone for showing up. You know, in the past few election cycles, I think the Secretary of States have gotten a lot of attention for being so central. But if you look, the AGs are doing a lot of the work on the front lines in terms of upholding the rule of law. And I've been moderating forums since 2017. And when I watch this AG field, there are three of the smartest, most passionate and skilled candidates running for one office. And it's a pleasure to listen to them explain why they want the office and what they'll do with it. So tonight, our forum has 4 parts. The first part is a 2-minute opening statement. The next part are 5 questions where the candidates have 90 seconds to answer. And if one of the candidates mentions the other, you get time for a 30-second rebuttal. Then we'll do a lightning round, and then the last part will be a 1-minute closing statement. So we'll get right into the opening statements now. And Quentin, why don't you start?
Thanks so much, Ed. It's a real pleasure to be here. JP has a special place in my heart. When I was in college, I founded a literacy program that taught adult basic education and English language learning in Bromley Heath, which is in Jamaica Plain. And I've seen firsthand how strong JP Progressives has been as a leader in the progressive community. The great honor to be endorsed by Progressive Massachusetts, which JPP is affiliated with. As a former Assistant Attorney General, I've seen firsthand how much impact the people's lawyer can have on communities all over the country. When Trump was in office, it was really inspiring to see Massachusetts fight back again and again and again against a corrupt and immoral administration. But now more than ever, with our fundamental values and rights under attack in the US Supreme Court, with our democracy literally under attack, with Congress failing to act on the most critical issues of our time, like the climate crisis and gun violence and racial injustice, Massachusetts is going to need to lead, and the AG is going to be at the center of the biggest issues of our time. I'm a true progressive in this race. I believe in healthcare as a human right. I want to build an economy that works for everyone. I want urgent action on the climate crisis and on gun violence, on educational injustice. And so I'm really looking forward to having some time with you, with Shannon, to talk through some of the really big issues that we face here in Massachusetts today. So thanks so much for having me.
Shannon?
All right, thank you, Ed and Annie and JP Progressives for putting together this event. I'm very excited to be here with you tonight. My name is Shannon Liss Reardon. Very proud to be running for Attorney General. I'll tell you some of my connection to JP. For one thing, I spent a lot of time there because I'm right across the Muddy River in Brookline. And I worked at the Harvard Law School Legal Services Center at JP back when I was in law school. I'm so excited about this race. I have dedicated my career to taking on the biggest challenges and delivering real results for working people. Throughout my legal career, I've used the law to help people's lives. For more than 20 years, I have taken on some of the most powerful interests in our country, and I've won. I've led teams of lawyers and made national headlines, taking on corporations like Starbucks, FedEx, Uber, Amazon, IBM, my alma mater, Harvard University, which I've sued at least 4 times, and I've won. I have won back hundreds of millions of dollars that corporate America stole from working people. In the process, I have changed and shaped the law across Massachusetts and throughout the country. I'm very proud to have used my experience and my knowledge as a lawyer to help regular people fighting back against powerful interests. I see this race as a job interview, and I ask you to please put my resume side by side with the other candidates in this race. I am the only candidate in this race who is a practicing lawyer. I'm the only candidate in this race who has run a law firm. I'm the only one who has won the jury trials, who has won the appeals that have helped shape our laws to better and more fairly serve the people. I've been an activist lawyer throughout my career. I got my start as a women's rights organizer and activist, which I learned from the legendary Bella Abzug back in the early 90s. I co-founded a nationwide young women's organization called the Third Wave with Rebecca Walker. I am proud of the support that I've received from the Massachusetts AFL.
Okay. Yeah, they cut you off. So we're going to be pretty firm. We're pretty firm with our timer tonight, but that was good. Given everything that's happening right now in 2022, can you tell us, what are the 2 skills you feel are essential for the AG to have for these next 4 years? And can you talk about, how do you possess those? And if you don't, how are you going to complement your skill set? And can you do that in the context of an office that I think the budget's about 53 million, and you've got an office of almost 400 staff and attorneys? And so I'll start with Shannon on that one.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't see exactly when I got cut off. I don't know if I said the part. I'm the only candidate in this race who has run a law firm. I think this is a very important skill. I think this is a race for a position which requires a seasoned, experienced lawyer, more so than a politician. Not a politician, I'm not a bureaucrat. I'm a practicing lawyer. I've taken on the largest institutions and most powerful interests, and I have won. I've led teams of lawyers across the country to victory. And we have a moment now with the Supreme Court having cut back on so many of our rights, reproductive rights, gun safety, fighting climate change. I've spent the last 20 years figuring out ways around bad Supreme Court decisions. So I have the skills to take on what we need to do. So much focus is going to be on the states now. I plan to be a leader among state attorneys general, taking on these fights that are now in the hands of the states. Massachusetts needs to be and will be a leader among states across the country. I've been fighting these battles for my whole career, and I've been winning, and I'm looking forward to doing that as your next attorney general.
It sounds like you feel like the skill of being a lawyer is number 1 and number 2 for you. You feel like those are the key too?
I think being a lawyer and also being someone who has managed a law firm, who has overseen teams of lawyers, who has directed legal strategy and worked with other lawyers to manage big, high-profile, important cases. And also, it's an executive and managerial function also. I've run a law firm with staff. We get calls all the time from people who are seeking help, against their employers. Same thing we're going to see in the Attorney General's office.
Very
It needs
good.
to be a place people can come to with their problems, and we need to either be able to help them or help direct them where they can find help.
Okay. Thank you, Shannon. Quentin, same question to you.
Thanks so much. I think there are three things that we need. One is experience, vision, and independence. In terms of experience, I'm a former assistant attorney general. I was the first chief of the healthcare division when we were implementing Massachusetts health reform. I led a team of lawyers, took on big insurance companies, helped with the implementation of health reform. I've worked in the White House under President Barack Obama, and in the Biden administration, I was the acting general counsel of the U.S. Department of Commerce. I led a team of about 400 lawyers in a $12 billion agency with almost 50,000 employees. And so I agree with Shannon that managerial experience, direct experience using an office like this, leading lawyers in the government law context is extremely important. Second is vision. This is an important time for us to have a truly progressive attorney general. I'm honored to have the support of Progressive Mass, the Progressive Dems of Mass, Our Revolution, and the endorsement of the Democratic Party. And I think that's in large part because of my progressive values. I'll fight for single-payer healthcare. I'll fight for safe injection sites. I'll fight for a cap on charter schools, for fare free transit, for police accountability, and for rent control, which are all issues in this race where there's at least one candidate who does not hold the progressive view on those approaches. But then finally, it's really important for us to have an independent attorney general. And that's why Shannon and I have signed the People's Pledge to keep special interest money out of the campaign. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about that as we go forward.
Okay, sounds good. Now, one thing here in JP Progressives, as we've been watching these past few years, we felt like there were overtime scandals and different issues with the state police department. And we kept sort of waiting for when the prosecution was going to follow. In your views, should the AG be aggressive on that? How should they team up with the U.S. attorney on an issue like that? And would you be more aggressive around investigating the state police when it's called for? And Quentin, I'll start with you.
Absolutely, we need to oversee the state police much more aggressively. Look, we imprison too many people for too long for doing too little. Race has too much to do with who ends up in the criminal justice system. And the AG needs to be a leader on both criminal justice reform and police accountability. We need to do a better job of overseeing the corrections system and certainly a better job overseeing the state police. The people who work in the state police deserve to work in an agency that has not been under the cloud of mismanagement and corruption, and the AG needs to play a much more aggressive role. I support the progressive prosecutor movement using prosecutorial discretion in innovative ways to undermine what the war on drugs has caused, which is this huge over-incarceration problem, radical racial injustice. I support eliminating qualified immunity for police officers, which is a difference that Shannon and I have in this race. I think that we need to be a lot more aggressive in overseeing not only the state police, but also the corrections system. What we hear about the conditions in our correctional institutions is shameful. And I've called to create a unit within the AG's office to oversee allegations of misconduct within the correctional system. We need to be part of the process of dismantling the carceral state and really taking on structural racism in our criminal legal system.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. I think your question was about the state police and the overtime scandal. And while Quentin and I share views on what we need to do to reform criminal justice, and I'll come back to that, let me answer your question first. I am not afraid of anyone. I've taken on huge, powerful interests throughout my career. I've taken on the state. In fact, right now, I have a lawsuit against the state police who've been violating our newly implemented Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. So I've taken on state actors, I've taken on our state civil service system for using a discriminatory exam that has had a disparate impact on Black and brown police officers and firefighters. And based on my work, we've gotten Black and brown police officers and firefighters hired across the state. I think that is so crucial to have police departments that are more reflective of the communities that they serve. I think that's very important for communication and trust, building up greater trust between police departments and the communities they serve. On other issues of criminal justice reform, you're going to come back to that, Ed, or do you want me to?
No, I think that's good right here. I
Yeah.
mean, and also Quentin did bring up a difference in qualified immunity. Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. And I agree with what Quentin said in the ad book that he put out at the Mass Democratic Convention, that we both agree with reforming qualified immunity. I think qualified immunity is a broken system. I'm a plaintiff's lawyer. I obviously agree with the right to a jury trial and having people get justice. I know that people have suffered at the hands of police officers, and we need to change our system to ensure that people can get justice when they have suffered abuse at the hands of police officers. The problem with qualified immunity is that the courts have just completely messed it up. And I know very much about qualified immunity because I was a federal law clerk for 2 years after law school, and I drafted decisions about qualified immunity. And I know that the problem is that courts are first supposed to decide whether or not a police officer's conduct was legal or illegal. And then they're supposed to decide, well, if it was illegal, was that something that was clearly established before the officer engaged in that conduct? And if it wasn't clearly established, then the plaintiff can't go forward to get a jury trial. The problem is that the courts skip over the first step. So my view on this is in agreement with what retired federal judge Nancy Gertner has said, is that we need to make sure that courts are spelling out, and the legislature needs to require that it be spelled out, what conduct is acceptable, what conduct is not acceptable, so the police officers understand their obligations, and that residents understand their rights. And we need to make sure that qualified immunity is not blocking people from getting justice when they suffer abuse and violence at the hands of police officers.
Okay.
So we need to reform the system.
Let me step in for a sec. Quentin, does that sound like an approach you could agree with, or would you advocate for a different approach to qualified immunity, to reforming
I
it?
do think that there's a difference of view here. I would eliminate it in the context of violent interactions between police and civilians. So I think if there's a circumstance like the George Floyd murder or the Breonna Taylor circumstance, I don't think that a special civil defense should be available to those law enforcement officers. There may be circumstances, for example, with firefighters in the negligence situation where qualified immunity makes sense. But I think in the instance where police officers are involved in violent altercations with civilians, I don't think a special civil defense is appropriate.
And I don't think qualified immunity did do anything to shield the officers who were involved in those cases. So we're in agreement on
I
that.
think we got a feel for your position. So, in the aftermath of West Virginia versus EPA, I think it became clear that the states were going to have to do a lot more on the environment. And President Biden visiting today sort of only underscored that. Quentin, can you lay out how you see using the Attorney General's platform and tools to advance the environmental agenda in Massachusetts and help us reach our emission goals for 2030?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ed. Every level of government, from the international community to our broken Congress to the Baker administration, has failed to meet the urgency of the moment on climate. What we do now or fail to do is going to determine what kind of life our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren live, but it is also now. And one of the things I've called for is a day one memorandum in the Attorney General's office saying that the climate crisis is everyone's responsibility across the administration. So of course, we're going to take on polluters like ExxonMobil. Of course, if we end up with another Trump administration, we're going to fight like hell against the overreaches of the federal government. But we also need to move urgently towards a clean energy revolution. That means fighting back against fossil fuel sites like the Peabody Peaker plant, like the Eversource pipeline in Springfield, like the Weymouth compressor station. It means finally overseeing the DPU, which is too cozy with the industries that it regulates. It means taking seriously environmental justice issues. We know that communities of color are hurt the most by the climate crisis. It means urgently using the bully pulpit to push for a carbon tax, fare-free transit, investments in a clean energy revolution. We can do well by doing good. We can compete against China. There are huge economic benefits to investing in wind, solar, geothermal, but we need to take this issue on with urgency.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Yeah, so the Supreme Court has dealt another blow to our fight against climate change through tying the hands of federal regulators behind their backs, which once again is going to put so much more emphasis on states and is going to put so much responsibility on state attorneys general. And I plan to be a leading attorney general in this country in the fight against climate change. I agree with everything that Quentin just said. I think the difference between us is our experience. I have spent 23 years taking on corporations for violating our laws, holding them accountable, and getting change and getting results. So I know from my law experience over the last 2 decades that getting the right laws on the books is just the first step. Now that the legislature has put forth this next generation roadmap, that's a first step, but laws don't enforce themselves. You need aggressive, knowledgeable leadership at the head of the AG's office who knows how to take these corporations on, who knows how to hold bad actors accountable. And I also plan to set up a fund at the AG's office, a green bank, where we would take penalties we would recover from these bad actor corporations who are profiting off of fossil fuels and furthering us into the abyss with climate change, and use those funds to fund clean energy projects and environmental justice projects. We absolutely need to have everyone at the table as we're figuring out our path forward. Communities of color have been the hardest hit by climate change. They need to be at the table as we're figuring out our way forward, figuring out siting for environmental projects, which is crucial. And I will be an attorney general who prioritizes making progress, doing what we need.
Okay, very good. Okay, with so much happening nationally, it's also easy to forget sort of the grassroots localized function of the Attorney General as well. So how are you equipped to manage both informing people about the services and protections that the Attorney General's office offers, as well as dealing with the Supreme Court and protecting the right to choice here? So, because those are two sort of different orientations, right? And I'd like each of you to sort of explain how you're equipped to make sure the AG's office accomplishes both simultaneously. And I think I have to start with Shannon. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there are so many aspects to the AG's office. And as I've been saying on the campaign trail, I see this not as one job, it's 20 jobs at least. And I agree, there's so much that needs to be done big picture, fighting Supreme Court decisions, moving forward on all of these issues that we care about so much. But there's also running the office and being accessible for the people of Massachusetts. And as I've been traveling around the state, I've been everywhere. I've been out the Berkshires, Western Mass, the Cape, the North Shore. What I've been hearing over and over again is that what people are looking for the AG's office to do is, yes, fight Exxon, fight the opioid crisis through taking on the pharmaceutical industry, but be there to answer the phone when we have issues, when there are consumer fraud issues, when there are workers who aren't getting their wages paid. We need to be responsive. I've led a law firm for years where I oversee a staff that is responsive, that takes intake calls. And I've seen to it that we have policies in place to make sure that people get answers. If we can't help them, how do we send them on their way to someone who may be able to help them? And then when we get complaints showing that there are broad-based issues going on out there that we can do something about, we take that on. And now with the power of the AG's office and all of the resources and staff it has, I look forward to being able to take those issues on a systemic level, like I've been doing through my law practice for the last 20 years, taking on big cases, impact litigation, and making a difference. So this multitasking is what I love. It's what I look forward to. And I see this as a...
Okay. Thanks, Shannon. Quentin, love to hear your answer.
I loved working in the Attorney General's office as an Assistant Attorney General and then as the Chief of the Healthcare Division for very much the reason that you're talking about, Ed. When I founded the Healthcare Division, one of the things I did was put the consumer complaints relating to healthcare companies into the division so that we were hearing directly from consumers about the problems that they were facing. And we kept hearing over and over again the insurance companies were lying to consumers about the scope of their coverage. And we took on those cases one at a time, trying to mediate with some of these health insurance companies. But over time, we realized that these were systemic issues. And so we brought lawsuits against the three biggest predatory health insurance companies in the Commonwealth. We sued them over the course of a couple of years, and that led to big recoveries for consumers and also allowed us to knock three predatory health insurance companies out of the jurisdiction. And that balance of these individual consumer protection matters and these bigger systemic issues is one of the things that makes the Attorney General's office unique. I also had the opportunity to lead a national multi-state investigation. We were co-counsel with Texas on a matter that led to a $175 million recovery from a major excess casualty health insurance company that was involved in allegations of bid rigging and price fixing. And so the office can really have that impact, as they had with Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family, as they had with ExxonMobil, as they had taking on Walmart and other big corporations. So this wonderful mixture of being able to directly deal with consumer problems, worker problems, civil rights problems, and also do.
Great. Now, one of the things, as you both know, Massachusetts and Boston in particular is in a housing crisis, an affordable housing crisis. And there's been lots of talk now about facilitating the development of housing around MBTA stations, around commuter access. In your views, is there a role for the AG in terms of housing policy and affordable housing in Massachusetts? And if so, how do you see you carrying that out? How do you see you carrying that out? Shannon?
Yeah, I think the AG's office has a big role to play in this housing crisis we have, and that's something else I've been hearing about a lot as I've been traveling around the state. So for one thing, I have a plan to establish an office of the housing advocate within the Attorney General's office, where we would provide representation and assistance to tenants. You go into housing court, the landlords all have representation, but the tenants don't. I want to make sure that tenants are on an even footing, and that there's also mediation going on. I want to have this program oversee mediation efforts so that housing courts are not just eviction mills, and that tenants have the resources at their disposal that are available to them to help them with this crisis. I would also take on issues of systemic discrimination, like I've been doing as a civil rights lawyer for years, take on landlords that are discriminating against tenants. There's racial discrimination. There is discrimination against families with young children, largely because of our laws regarding how we have tried to address the lead crisis in our housing stock. I think it's a huge issue. It hasn't been talked about so much recently, but it's a health issue, it's an equity issue, it's an educational issue. We have laws on the books here in Massachusetts that were intended to get us to de-leaded housing stock. It hasn't worked. I would actively work with the legislature to make sure we are doing everything we can to get housing de-leaded. It's crucial for our children, and I would fight that along with other impediments to people getting the housing.
Very good, getting right in time. Okay, Quentin, your turn.
So look, economic inequality is one of the great societal challenges of our time, and housing costs are a huge part of that. Rent is too high, mortgages are too expensive, housing is too expensive, and the AG has a really major role to play in consumer protection in both the borrowing and in the renting space. When I was in the AG office, I was in the part of the AG office that was then called the Public Protection and Advocacy Bureau, and it had two pieces that really took on this housing crisis. At the time, it was the beginning of the mortgage lending crisis. We used the unfair and deceptive trade practices laws to take on big banks when they're mistreating borrowers in the mortgage foreclosure crisis, got big recoveries, and then were able to use some of those recoveries to help consumers. There are also the civil rights laws, and we know that housing discrimination has been a really big problem for many years, and it continues to this day. And so we have the opportunity to use both of those sets of tools to stand up for borrowers against big banks, and to stand up for renters when they're being mistreated by landlords. We also need to be involved using the bully pulpit to push for greater affordable housing. And there are a number of ways that we can do that. We certainly need more investments in the housing stock. I think we ought to take a careful look at 40B to both focus on desegregation, creating more affordable housing, and also smart growth that's going to help the environment. We ought to be very serious about homelessness and supportive housing, and investing in making sure that everyone has housing as a human right. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunities for the Attorney General's office to be the people's lawyer.
Okay. And so one more question just a short one before we get into the lightning round. Can you tell a story or an example about how you've fought for racial justice, or in your professional career, you've worked on a case or an issue or matter that you feel like advanced the cause of racial justice, that can give viewers confidence that you'll be able to do that if you're elected Attorney General? And I'll start with Quentin.
Sure, thank you so much. So when I was in law school, I was part of the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau, which is a public service entity that takes on low-income clients in a number of different contexts. One of them is the one that we're talking about here, which is clients facing eviction. I represented a number of clients who were low-income clients who were facing, structural racism within the housing system. I represented a number of clients who were in the who were in the unemployment system and who were facing racial injustice in that way, represented victims of domestic violence in divorce proceedings, and so had a number of different opportunities to work on those issues. Later in my career, I ran the Poverty Lab at MIT, which uses evidence-based policy to try to make sure that when we're investing in social services, whether philanthropies or governments, that they're doing so on the basis of the best available evidence. And in that capacity, I led a number of different initiatives that focused on some of the effects of racialized injustice, whether that's in the criminal legal system, whether that's in the education system or the healthcare system. When I was the chief of the healthcare division in the AG office, I was on the Governor's Council on Racial Disparities as the AG's representative. That's an area where there's a deep racial injustice in the system. So it's come up over and over again throughout my career.
Yeah, that sounds good. And Shannon, same for you.
So I have been a workers' rights and civil rights lawyer for 23 years. I've taken on countless cases of race discrimination. I'll just mention for you a few highlights, some of my favorite cases in this area. I already told you about the one involving our challenge to the state civil service system, through which we got Black and brown firefighters and police officers hired. But I remember a case I had against a cement company which had never hired a Black employee before, and when a Black applicant stood in front of them and asked for a job, they had some excuse. I won that case, and I got them ordered to have to report on their racial hiring for years at the MCAD. I've been proud to represent more recently Whole Foods workers who wore Black Lives Matter masks after the killing of George Floyd. And even though Whole Foods claimed to be anti-racist and had racism has no place here up on their website and signs all over, when their employees tried to say that, they got sent home without pay and they got fired. So I've been proud to stand up for them in the courts, and at the National Labor Relations Board. I'm in a trial that's going on all summer, taking on Whole Foods for its racially discriminatory actions against those workers. I've also, just a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago at this point, I took on a Georgia school system which engaged in incredibly racially discriminatory discipline. They were letting these white students run around wearing Confederate flags. They reenacted the murder of George Floyd, and there were no repercussions for these white students. And then when Black students stood up and said they wanted to have a peaceful protest, and we're Black.
Okay, I told you we're ruthless. We're ruthless. So we're going to go through, we're going to go through some lightning round questions, and then that'll lead us into your closing statements. Okay. And so we'll try to be yes or no. Okay. Do you support legislative proposals for ending cash bail? Ending cash bail? Shannon?
I would
can
end cash
yeah.
bail. I'm
Okay.
sorry, are we going in order or are we just going
So
thumbs
I
up,
think
thumbs
we-
down? How do you want to do this?
I feel like we can do it pretty much simultaneously, but why don't I go, why don't I do that
No,
again?
I oppose cash bail. We shouldn't be criminalizing poverty.
Okay, Shannon,
Yeah, I agree with that.
you're
I
there,
oppose cash bail.
okay. What about increasing the age at which someone is charged in juvenile court? Were you familiar with that?
I'm in favor of increasing the age to be
Okay.
charged in juvenile court, or yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Shannon?
Yes, and I support diversion programs for juveniles so they don't get into the system and have this on their records forever.
Very good. What about the issue of banning no-knock warrants? Do you have a position on that? Yes or no?
I oppose no-knock warrants. I support a ban on no-knock warrants.
Very good. Nice. Thanks for the clarification. And Shannon?
Yes, I oppose no knock warrants.
Okay. And also, I don't know if we get into this, but about, let's see. What about banning the use of facial surveillance and biometric technology by law enforcement?
I would ban it. I have serious concerns about facial surveillance.
Okay. Shannon, same for you?
Yes, I'm in favor of banning it. It's racist. It raises serious concerns.
Okay. And last of those, what about safe injection sites? And you can give actually a 30-second answer on this one. Is this something you feel like is a tool that should be, given how bad the opioid deaths are here in Massachusetts, do you feel like safe injection sites should be part of the toolkit that we're using?
Sorry, well, mine or Shannon's first.
Wait, why don't you go?
So I support safe injection sites. Look,
Yeah.
we're not going to arrest and incarcerate our way out of problems that are primarily about substance use disorder and other structural racism. We need to have a much more investment in prevention, in substance use treatment programs, in stable housing and mental health services. And I think that safe injection sites are an important part of that. And this is an issue that's come up in this campaign. As a difference with our third opponent who has opposed them in the past. I believe it should be part of the toolkit and would support them.
Very good. And Shannon, same question?
Yes, I support safe injection sites. I've long supported them and spoken out in favor of them. We need to use every tool at our disposal to get help to people who need it. It's a way of getting people in connection, in contact with those who may be able to provide assistance. I've been proud to be talking with folks, and I'm supported by a number of Somerville City councilors who've been fighting to get a safe injection site cited in Somerville, and I've been with them. I've talked with them about what we can do to move that forward.
Okay. And I guess one relation to that, how hard are you prepared to fight for that? Because that's sort of a question. I think the other candidates has more said it's partly a local choice and I'll go with whatever they want. But do you think that's sort of a viable position, or would you prefer to be more of a persuader on that issue because you feel like the public health benefits are legitimate? I mean, how vociferous would you be around trying to open people's minds about that as being, part of the toolkit? And Shannon, why don't you go first?
I would be vocal about that. And I think this is where the bully pulpit part of the AG's office comes into play, because I think it's an issue that needs to get more attention. And it is something I would strongly advocate for. The other candidate in the race, who's not here tonight, has flip-flopped on this issue, and depending on her audience, has given different answers. But I support safe injection sites and would champion them.
Okay. And Quentin?
Look, the war on drugs has been an abysmal failure. It's led to massive over-incarceration. It's led to these huge racial disparities. And I just think that we need, so I would like to be very vocal in two particular respects. One is that we ought to deeply look at reforming the criminal legal system, focusing more on prevention, and try and dismantle some of the ways in which those racial disparities and that over-incarceration has plagued our system. But the other thing I want to mention is our public health system also needs to focus more on prevention. One of the reasons I'm such a big fan of single payer, I'm sorry, I guess I'm going to be muted, but
No, good. No, you're good. Good. You can
Okay.
keep going.
One of the reasons I'm such a big fan of single payer is I think our healthcare system is fundamentally broken. We spend about $1 out of every $5 in our healthcare system, in our economy on healthcare, and yet we get worse results than a lot of other economies. And one of the things that we fail to do is be proactive about the kinds of public health challenges that have the greatest racial disparities. So that's substance use disorder, that's mental health challenges, but it's also chronic disease management, obesity, diabetes, asthma, and we ought to be shifting our focus, both in the criminal legal system and in the public health system, more towards prevention. And so, yes, I would like to use the bully pulpit, as Shannon talks about, of the AG office to be advocating for those kinds of approaches. And safe induction sites are one piece of that approach.
One piece of it. Shannon, I gave Quentin a little more time there. Would you like 30 more seconds to flesh out your position or say something?
I think I answered your question on safe injection sites. Can I add it to my closing?
Well, we can
Is that
get
what you
into
wanna
we can get into the closing now. And
Okay.
since we're on you, Shannon, why don't you close this out with your statement?
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks again so much for having this forum. I think it's really great for us to have the opportunity to really talk more in depth, not just sound bites about the different issues. What I'd like to leave you with is, once again, I think this is a job for an experienced, seasoned attorney who knows how to use the legal system to get things done. I once again urge you to please put my resume side by side with the other candidates in this race and decide who you would hire to be the next lawyer for the people of Massachusetts. I have spent my career taking on the most powerful interests more than 23 years. I have taken on the largest corporations in America, and I've won. I have gotten money back into people's pockets. I have helped shape the law here in Massachusetts and across the country. I have been acting as a private attorney general for more than 20 years, and I'm so excited about all that we have ahead of us, the work that needs to be done with the power of the state behind me. I'm very proud to have the support of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO, more than 50 labor unions, including the Mass Teachers Association, American Federation of Teachers, Mass Nurses Association, and I can go on and on. Please take a look at our website, shannon4ag.com. Would really love your support, would love you to get involved. I would be so honored to have the endorsement of JP Progressives. And I thank you all for everything that you are doing to help promote progressive values and make Massachusetts a better place to live for all of us. So thank you all so much for having me tonight.
Very good. Quentin.
Thanks so much. And thanks to JP Progressives. What a wonderful forum. What a wonderful opportunity to talk. Thank you, Shannon, for a great conversation. Look, I'm honored to have the endorsement of the Democratic Party in this race, Progressive Massachusetts, Progressive Dems of Massachusetts, and Our Revolution. And I promise you that if I am the Attorney General, I will fight for healthcare as a human right. I will fight for an economy that works for everyone, for urgent action on the climate crisis, on gun violence, protecting reproductive rights, on racial injustice, because that's what the people's lawyer does. I've been an assistant attorney general. I've been in the Obama White House. That's the kind of attorney general that I want to be. And I'd love to do it side by side with this organization. I'd be honored to have your support. I really believe in grassroots campaigning. And I would love for you to join our team. And I would love to have your endorsement. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. You know, two good candidates who really know their stuff. You know, thanks for sharing your answers with the voters and giving us a better sense of what you offer.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Ed.
You got it.
Thank you. Good night.
Got it. Thanks.
I think I am tasked with closing us out.
I'm going to hand it over to Ruben, who's got. Yeah, go ahead,
Thanks.
Ruben. Go for it.
Sorry, thanks, Ed. So first of all, thank you everyone who attended. So excited to see so many people coming out on this hot summer weeknight. Special thanks to Shannon and Quentin. Thank you so much for being here. Ourselves, I know it's a busy time on the campaign trail, so we really appreciate you being here. And thank you very much, Ed, for the great job you did today, and you always do moderating these forums. I want to let folks know that immediately after this, we are going to start the community conversation. The community conversation that we have instructs the endorsement process for the JP Progressives. And in that community process, so that community conversation today, we'll be discussing this race as well as the district attorney race and I believe the sheriff race as well. So that will be starting immediately after that. And really, I just want to say also, what makes Jamaica Plain Progressive strong is all of you. The grassroots work that we do, canvassing for our endorsed candidates, getting the word out. This is the strength of the organization. We would be nothing without our members and without the incredible work that we do. And so we're urging folks to take the time and think about their schedules this last month or so, 5 weeks before the election. It is crazy that we have an election the day after Labor Day. School in Boston opened the day, 2 days after the election. It's a really strange time. So that's what makes the grassroots work that we're going to do, knocking on doors, getting word out, and urging people to do mail-in ballot and early voting. So important, but we can't do that without all of your help. So we hope that you'll join us for all that. Sign up for any of the canvas shifts, and I think hopefully someone has posted or is posting in the chat something about that, or can post something in the chat to sign up for that as well.
Let's just release our candidates who are so,
Oh, sorry, I
generous with
apologize.
their time.
Shannon and Quentin, you are certainly released if you. Thank you so much for being here, and we really
Thanks so much,
appreciate you.
Ruben. Such a pleasure. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ed. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
And just the last thing I will say before we head over to the community conversation is one of our endorsed candidates is Samantha Montano. She's running for state representative. And there's going to be a meet and greet, not a fundraiser, a meet and greet for Sam this Sunday at 3 p.m. It's going to be at my backyard outdoors. Hopefully will be not quite as hot as today, but everyone here is certainly invited. And so you can reach out to us and let us know if you're interested, and we'll send over the address. And we'll be kicking off right into a canvas as well after that. So unless there's any other key information I need, and as Ina said, also love to have folks canvassing for the Fair Share ballot amendment, a key plank for progressives this coming fall. So with that, I think we take maybe a minute and then